everybody, to the Distill Buildings Technology Podcast.
Where smart buildings are stirred, shaken, and data-driven.
I'm your host, Jason Shearer.
I'm your host, AK.
And today we're here with Scott Panzer. So, Scott, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, awesome. So, AK and I know you pretty well. I've gotten to know you really well over the past couple of years. But for those of us, those of our audience out there that have never had the chance to spend time with you, Scott, like tell us a little bit about your background and like how you got to where you are today with DBS and JLL.
So, if you want to go back to conception, we can do that and have some fun. Born in Brooklyn. Well, I guess conception somewhere near there. born in Brooklyn, winged in Queens, puberty in a suburb of New York City. Off to University of Miami at the ripe old age of 17, thinking I was going to be Jacques Cousteau II. So spent 4 years in marine science and biology and chemistry. No grants for doing research at the time, so I said, let me try dental school. Applied to dental school, got in, went to the clinic in NYU, and said, can't think I want to look down people's throats the rest of my life. So went back to Miami, got my MBA, graduated from there, and then went into business. So started working at Reader's Digest, then went over to doing mergers and acquisitions for Robert Maxwell. And if you know the famed Ghislaine Maxwell, that's her father. So we spent several years doing M&A, took over all the real estate, launched a lot of projects with him. Then they filed bankruptcy. I started my consulting company doing the work out of the real estate. And then for the last 34 years, I've been doing commercial real estate. And then 8 years ago, on a lark, we started Digital Building Solutions with really being a cutting edge in terms of what offices need, what buildings need to be intelligent going forward.
That's awesome. Scott, just give a brief description of what DBS does and what services does it provide today?
So Digital Building Solutions, aka DBS, is an end-to-end solution for occupiers, developers, owners who are looking for intelligent systems to be part of their narrative on whether they're going to build a new building, retrofit their office space going forward. It's 21st century going to 22nd century technology. The technology continues to grow and expand and do what it needs to do. No different than if you're looking at electric cars or you're looking at self-driving vehicles like Waymo. I mean, it's the same sort of thing. So DBS takes the end user customer from conception and consulting to the end deliverable, and then does a managed service after that.
Awesome. And I know just from our experience together, it's a pretty disruptive process to the status quo, which I'm sure we'll talk a lot about today. But before we do, part of the Distill Buildings Tech podcast is kind of bringing together spirits and technology in the building space. So we always have our guests, share with us like what's in their glass today.
So normally, and as we talked about earlier, normally in my glass would have been a nice martini, shaken, not stirred. But James considering that I flew up from Palm Beach to my house in Connecticut, and I'm sitting there going, it's 42. I left 90-degree weather to come to 42-degree weather. In my glass today is a little bit of bullet.
Excellent.
With one big rock. So that's it.
Same.
There you go. Cheers,
Same
guys.
Thing. Cheers.
Yep. There it is.
Oh, you're going to send me one of those glasses now, right?
Oh, yeah. We'll bring one to New York for you.
Totally.
We'll bring it to Cisco Live. Yeah.
Yes. Yep. We'll bring it out there.
And the combination of a bourbon and a rock, Scott, is it one big rock? Is it a little bit of rock? Is it neat? What's your
mine is one big rock.
Yep.
Okay.
It melts slow, stays cool, just enough, right? Because if you get normal rock, just every time you drink a little bit, all the stuff goes in your face, and this works out much better.
Yeah, we had a conversation when we were up in New Jersey a couple of weeks ago, AK with a bottle store owner in Maplewood, around like the preference, right, and the style around that. And I think for us, it always comes down to like drink bourbon or drink whatever you want, like whatever style you want.
Yeah. Good stuff.
Cool. So disruptive technology in the building space. talk a little bit about like what's the business imperative around that technology led motion, and why are customers looking at that today?
So if you go back 20 years, let's go back 25 years. Everybody had a telephony. Everybody had a telephone on their desk. And then they went to VoIP, right? Voice over IP. And now it doesn't exist anymore, right? We're doing it all on our computers. Similarly, you look at the technology in an office space environment or industrial space environment, and everything was incandescent lamps. Then it went to fluorescent lamps. For industrial, the T8s, right? They went to halogens, right? They wanted something, but each one of those, while there was a level of efficiency associated with the lamping, right? The next iteration was LED fixtures. And 15 years ago, nobody was jumping on LEDs. Why? Oh, they said we couldn't tune them, we couldn't balance them, we couldn't dim them, we couldn't do all these things. And yet today, there's not a single new installation that is not totally permeated with all LED fixtures. The lighting designers will still turn around and say, "No, let me have an incandescent warm kind of thing." But at the same time, LEDs 100% there all the time. At the same time, controls of those fixtures became much more important going forward. So you had companies like Wattstopper and Lutron and others step in and say, "Well, we'll give you a more robust control package." So what we've done in our environment, just taking the lighting piece for the moment, is we've said, wait a second, why do you have to have two different systems? Why do you have to have a line voltage system, which is inefficient because you're stepping it down to a low voltage to meet the needs of the LED board? And then you have to have a separate wiring or non-wiring for the control side. We said, okay, isn't there something out there that can do the same? And sure enough, Cisco and others, but not as much as Cisco, but others came out with this switch technology and said, hey, I'll give you power out of a port, and I'll also let you have data transmission on that port. And then we had companies that came out and said, wait a second, like MHT Inspector or Molex and others said, wait a second, we'll give you the control piece and also turn the lights on and off and do all the other things. And we can now communicate with shades, and now we can communicate with VAV control boxes, and now we can do waypoints, and we can do all these other things that you didn't have before. So the disruptor around this is the fact that under one category cable, right, we can push enough power and grab all the data in one piece, which then when you look at what's happening and what Cisco's has done with Spaces and others, you're now saying, wait a second, I can grab all that environmental data and have one dashboard that takes it out of there. So everybody's jumping on that now. Everybody wants it. But here's what's the interesting thing, as I think you alluded to earlier. There's a little bit of pushback in the industry, but it's very, very selfish pushback. So selfish from the standpoint of an EC, electrical contractor, doesn't understand, wait a second, I'm going to lose the ability to run the voltage, that light now. Well, don't worry about it. We'll handle that. We'll figure that out. We'll show you how you still make money. Or an MEP, mechanical, electrical, plumbing engineer, says, wait a second, I'm going to lose money on how do I design the lighting package. We'll say, no, we're going to teach you how to do that. We're going to show you how to do that so you can then do that, still capture the same revenue you would have for your client, but now you're giving them a much more robust, interactive, intuitive system that they didn't have before. So we have that pushback, but then we're showing them how to step over that.
And how are you changing that? You have a unique lens, right? You come from the broker side and the real estate and commercial real estate, and then you have a servicing and development of a customer relation, giving them that opportunity to see from a technology standpoint, this is the way to design your new building. How do you bridge those two together? And what does that mean to the client?
So, well, I'll tell you what it means to the client. It's sort of like the guy sitting in the room that, like me, right, that doesn't have an Hispanic name or Hispanic look, but speaks Spanish fluently, and everybody else around him is Hispanic, and they're talking, think I don't know what they're saying. Well, the reality is when you go into an industry like that, I'm coming from the lens of my JLL VC hat, right? Where I understand the real estate world, I understand the construction world, I understand how they think, I understand from project management all the way down to delivery. And we're sitting there going, guys, you're all talking around each other and you're all taking advantage of a client and trying to push your narrative forward for the financial benefit of yourself, not necessarily for the client. I went, wait a second, by the way, guys, I understand Spanish. You can't hide that from me. Let's have that language now. And they go, well, we didn't know he knew that. So all of a sudden people are standing up and going, okay, we gotta deal with this, right? We'll have to figure out what it means. So what we're spending a lot of time doing is leveling out CapEx pricing, right? Where we get pushback. And we're showing the end user customer that what they're being told is not correct. False narrative, false news. Here's the reality. You'll say it's equal to or less on CapEx. We have all the data to show it, and we'll have energy savings going forward.
That's really interesting. We had a conversation with Jeff Beavers with Nika a couple of weeks ago, and he highlighted just some of the challenges in the electrical trade as a whole of like lower lower labor capabilities, right? Like there's somewhere around like in the U.S. like 10,000 electricians leaving the trade and only 7,000 coming in. Which, when you think about supply and demand, that's just going to push lead times and project schedules out because those high voltage electrical contractors just don't have the capacity. Does that come into the equation when you're talking to owners reps and MEP firms?
Not necessarily. I can see
Mm-hmm.
where it might in the future, but robotics and more importantly, the advent of simpler tools are making the speed to delivery for electricians, plumbers, HVAC mechanics a lot quicker. But I will tell you that if I had a young son or daughter today, in their teens, and they were thinking about what do they want to do with their life, I'd say go into the trades because you'll be the most sought after person out there out of all your friends in the future. I'm mark my words. You can put it. You heard it on this podcast, and I've said it on other podcasts.
Yeah.
AI is going to make a lot of humanity superfluous. A lot of
Mm-hmm.
programmers are going to go away. A lot of technicians are going to go away. What's going to be out there that is needed? You're still
Yeah.
going to have that hand-eye coordination, but you're not going to be sweating pipes anymore. You're going to be crimping them. The electrical side of it, you still have to run that piece of it, but the low voltage side is so much easier and so much safer.
Faster.
That,
Yeah.
and that's the so they're going to have to reinvent themselves. Now, what they'll do is it's no different than what Bumblebee tuna fish did with the can of tuna fish. It used to be $1.40 and you got 1.4 ounces. Now it's $1.70 and you're getting 1 ounce. Right. So what electricians are going to do is, I used to run conduit. I used to run the BX I used to run the Romex inside that conduit.
Mm-hmm.
I used to run BX. I'm now going to run the low voltage cable, but I'm still going to charge you $180 an hour. Right. Where the low voltage guy today is only charging at $70 an hour. So that's where the inherent savings comes today. There's going to be a merge of those two. There's going to be a crossover. And at that apex in the next 5 to 7 years, you'll see that happening. The other thing that's going to happen, I think, is that the unions are deathly afraid of low voltage. Why?
Absolutely.
Because it's safe.
Yeah.
What they hang their hat on is why you need unions of saying, we're going to deliver safe solutions. Well, you don't need safe in low voltage. You could take a category. Think of a category cable, RJ45, stick it on your tongue. You won't feel that. Not even like a 9-volt battery, if anybody's ever
Mm-hmm.
seen that. You do that with a socket, guess
Yep.
what, right?
Yep. Yep.
So,
Like
so
that.
there's a
Yep.
lot of that happening in the industry.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good point and really topical. Like my oldest son graduated high school this week, and I'm really grateful that he's not going into a software development or computer science course of study. He's not going into the trades, but he is just kind of sticking to like a general business and marketing track, which I think
I think that's smart because
people skills will always be king.
for sure.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you mentioned a few things, Scott, when you say that the industry might be a little bit worried and afraid, and how do you bridge the two with not introducing scarcity, but just allowing them to think through the innovation? This is no different to what you said. Voice over IP was not around, and then it became around, and now it's gone. And all of a sudden, we had a BlackBerry, and we were afraid to touch the screen, and we can't live without a phone that has a touch space. How do you bring that forward to the trades to say, look, this is not going to take your job. You might just need to adapt. And what's the
Well,
best way to actually do it?
so what we've done is in a city like New York, which is heavily unionized, we've gone to the local 3 electrical unions and said, look, guys, here, play in the sandbox. Because if you don't, you're going to lose 100%. So capture 50 to 60%. It'll scale back over time, but you're still the net winner. What does that mean? Well, you still have an electrical fixture, so you can claim that as your jurisdiction. You got to hang the electrical fixture. You'll take delivery of it. You'll hang it. I mean, just to give you an example, if you buy anybody who's done this before, the cost to manufacture a typical 2x2 trough or fixture is about $35 to $40. By the time it shows up and installed on a job, whether it's office or industrial, it's over $350. It's insane,
Gee.
right? So this,
Geez, you just gave out MHT lighting pricing. It doesn't mean that you buy it for that price.
No, it doesn't mean you buy it, because here's what happens. You go through distribution, you have distribution, then you get the markup and the markup and the markup. But the point is that by the time it shows up on site, it's tenfold what it originally started at from a manufacturing perspective, right? So what happens is you say to everybody, we're going to make it more efficient. And I think that some of the things that in the programs that we're doing, when we talk about and I'm I coined the phrase hunt as a pack and everybody's jumping on it now, is that we go to each of these people and we say, here's what you're going to get. This is what you're going to keep as your part of it. We go to the MEP consultant, right? The E side of the MEP, the electrical, and we say, take your low voltage people. We're going to teach them how to do a proper drawing around a low voltage distributed infrastructure using power over Ethernet. Mm-hmm. Once they perfect that and they master that, they'll capture that revenue, right? So DBS is acting as both an educator and an integrator for the industry. And what's happening is you're getting greater adoption as we go through that. The more people that get to see what the economic benefit is to them, the more that will continue to grow what they want to do with it.
Yeah. And you brought up that point around, like the MEP organizations and specifiers. We hear a lot from like project managers that like risk, right? That they're afraid of this technology because they think it will incorporate risk into their project, derail timelines, all of that. Like, how do we generally like work around that or convince them that this is going to not risk your project, but rather like de-risk your project?
So first look, we've got 4.5 million square feet of successes, right? Having done this work, but we also have about, not as many, but probably let's say 10 projects that didn't go well for project managers, didn't go well for construction managers, didn't go well for electrical contractors. Why? Predominantly because it was poorly designed by people who profess to say they can do it, right? And then somebody took that poor design and did a poor installation. And yet it's so much simpler than doing line voltage and having controls. So there's a little bit of that goes in. There's a little bit, hey, I don't want to really change and depart from what I've done for the last 125 years. Think about this. Line voltage, AC has been around for 125 plus years. So they don't want to change that. They went to school for that. The old guard's still doing that. The new guard's coming in and doing it. They're paying, and this will go out there and I'm sure I'll get spanked for it by somebody, but everybody's got a lot of stuff going on under the table between a project manager, the construction manager, and the subcontractors. There's a whole lot of things changing hands. I'm not saying it's necessarily money, but there's a whole lot of things that are changing hands that making that ecosystem that you're constantly kind of breaking through on it. Yeah. The PMs are saying we don't want to touch it because we've had some failed projects. Why? Well, because, as I said, bad design, bad execution. We've come in and fixed the bad execution, and we're unwinding some of the bad design. So part of it is education, it's knowledge transfer. And once people get comfortable with it, they'll jump into it. Not everybody gets in a race. Everybody drives a car. Anybody who's 17 or older in this country drives a car. Not everybody will get on a racetrack. But if you teach somebody how to do that, they'll do it. Not everybody's buying an electric car. Not everybody wants 1,000 gigawatts under their you-know-whats, but that's why. But ultimately, that may be the full adoption if you go forward with that. So there's lots of things that are happening. The mob will move and sway depending upon where the wind goes and how much wind goes into that sail.
Speaking of, I think, well, first of all, congratulations on trademarking Hunt as a Pack. I think that was a smart move. I've heard it.
Yeah. I wasn't sure if you guys, did you see it? I wasn't sure if you saw it yet.
Yeah, it's out there.
Heard it here first.
Yep. Yeah. We hear people still saying it over and over. So congratulations on that. But for the audience that's listening, that they don't understand any of the nuances, and it's great to know that. But if I'm a building owner and I just want to know what's a day of life of just an intelligent building that Scott builds 4.5 million square feet of, what does that look like?
Well, it looks like what we're doing right now on our computers. There's a dashboard. That dashboard gives you all real time data on what's happening. It's literally like going into your car and you turn the key or you push the button, and all of a sudden, remember, you used to just have analog gauges. Now you have a center screen. That center screen is all touch point, and that can tell you what's going on. Cisco Spaces, which was really an offshoot of a software that I started putting together and we showcased for a bunch of people, now gives people real time, gives occupiers real time, gives building owners real time data for what's happening, and that data is so critical. The next iteration that's happening is that's the if then in the programming side. When you get to the second part of it, it's the go to, which just envisage for a moment walking into a conference room that's fully integrated, right, through low voltage distributed data transmission and power. What does that mean? Well, it counts the people that are in the room. It tells everybody what the temperature is. It tells everybody what the environment is. It tells everybody how many VOCs or O2 or CO2 levels in there. And the AI side of it automatically adjusts that room. So when you start talking to the end user, the customer, what are they getting? They're getting access to data, and that data is going to ultimately drive what happens and a narrative and what happens for that space going forward. That's what we're talking to them about.
And it's really kind of like bridging the gaps between the different data domains that have always been in silos, right? So like HVAC, they were locked up in their little bubble. Lighting was locked up in their bubble. The IT side, maybe a bigger bubble, but they were somewhat isolated. So in a building of the future or an intelligent building, like all of those silos are either broken down or connected and able to
Correct,
share
100% right.
data.
And what's funny is that the commercial real estate is so far behind residential. I'm sitting in my house in Connecticut right now, right? I can sit there and say, Alexa, breakfast lights on, right?
Uh-oh.
Oh, gee, how did that happen?
Everybody's Alexa's like on the listening to the podcast,
Right,
like just
exactly. Okay.
everybody's
Yeah,
lights been on.
right. Alexa, your Alexa, right? Alexa in
Yeah.
your house is going, we don't have breakfast lights here. What are you talking about? AK's going, wait, no, that's in my other place, right?
Yeah.
But it's funny. I got to be careful because if I say the wrong thing, I'll shut my lights off in my Palm Beach house,
Yeah.
right? And then right. So now, but think about that. And I can say, okay, Alexa, breakfast lights off. But when I came in earlier, she didn't hear me. Alexa, breakfast lights off. So when I came in the house, right? When I came in the house earlier, right? I said, Alexa, I'm home. Guess what? She knows I like the temperature at X. And if I know I'm going to watch TV, the TV will come on. How is it that we don't have that in commercial space? Now, let me give you more, even greater examples. You get on a plane, we all travel somewhere around the world.
Mm-hmm.
You get on that plane, you think the pilot's flying that plane. That pilot sits there and puts a whole bunch of digital inputs into this thing, right? Puts all the vectoring around. He may put the throttles forward, keep his hand on, or her, keep the handle on. That thing takes off. Once it gets to a certain point, they hit a button and the plane does the rest. And they're only there if the plane, all of a sudden the computer shut down.
Yeah, I've heard that a lot from a colleague of ours at Cisco. He uses the metaphor of like self-driving cars, right? Like we have
Yeah.
self-driving cars, and that industry has been around a lot shorter, comparatively to buildings. But we don't have self-driving buildings yet. But we have the capability of doing it.
And not that, but what's the harm?
Yeah.
What's the harm in this? If the self-driving building system fails and shuts down, you're still going to have a building engineer within X minutes to do that. And it's not like the building's just going to explode. We're talking about heat, air conditioning, lighting, shades, right? BMS. I mean, think about that. It's I was in California. I called a Waymo, right? The Waymo shows up. There's nobody in the front seat. It's got all these cameras, everything going in. I get in the back seat. I close the door. It was weird. It was like really strange. It was something at a Total Recall.
Yeah.
Right? But, what's the next iteration from that? I can't imagine. Something's going to pop out of the glove box and they're going to give me a glass of bullet.
That's next.
That's next. Yeah.
So, given your expertise in DBS and handing over projects, give us some success stories that you've developed, and the customer went back and says, "I want to do this again, and I want to do it around the globe." What does that look like?
So, believe it or not, the major law firms were, I would say, the early adopters of this technology because they said, you know what, we need to think about our partners and what makes their life better, simpler, faster. So,
That
initially
and
enough,
real quick, that's really fascinating, like that vertical, because they tend to be really conservative,
You think
like
of,
from a
yeah.
technology standpoint, financially conservative. So I'm really interesting to hear about like the compelling
yeah.
why. Yeah.
Skadden, Arps, Meagher, and Flom, one of the top firms in the world, were the first adopters of it. A guy named Peter Lesser is head of IT there. Really, really smart guy. Said, I want this. And he was early adopter. I think he did his 6 years ago. So it was older technology. I believe they may be even under a 60 watt, not 90 watt platform when they did theirs. But again, he had some issues with it. He's still happy with it. Had some issues with it, but it was based upon, again, poor design, poor execution. Following through, right? There's been 5 other major law firms that have all put it in. We did Sherman and Sterling end to end solution. Not a single glitch with the whole project, right? End to end. Debevoise and Plimpton, 600,000 square feet. They put it in. Actually, the general contractor split the execution up between us and another firm. The other firm's 6 floors were, I would say, not a fail, but maybe 70% success. We were 100% success. We came in and fixed the other 30%. We're now doing day 2 managed service and support for Debevoise and Plimpton. So when you think through what happens, it's back to the narrative that we started with. It's simple if you just understand what it is and take your time to do it, right? You don't get in the car and just drive and think I'm going to make it the first time. Somebody has to educate you. So the more we educate, the more we go through that, the adoption is going to continue to grow. There's been a tremendous rollout for warehouse and distribution centers now. I think AK's own company has picked up several million square feet of warehouse for their product to go in because why? It's simple to just plug an RJ45 into the light and pull it out.
Yeah, cookie cutter. We're having the same conversations around, around data centers. Obviously, there's a huge data
Correct.
center boom, and even though 90% of the time it's lights out operation, they still need lights.
That's exactly right.
So putting in like, and those deployments are so cookie cutter, right? Like every data center, you can just template it out.
And again,
And
as we
then,
talked about, this is not limited to lights. This
Oh
is
yeah.
any power injected low voltage endpoint that wants data is under the
Hmm.
same capacity.
Yeah.
what are some of those endpoints that you're seeing, Scott, that the audience can hear and go, "Oh, I didn't even know that could be possible"?
Well, I mean, cameras for one. I mean, everybody's all about, camera awareness, what's happening, right? What's going on in my space. Um, it's not so much that that companies want to check up on their employees, right? It's that they want to use that data to then drive, okay, what's my occupancy utilization? So that's something you wouldn't have thought about. The environmental endpoints. COVID gave us, kind of a wake up, a little slap in the face and said, hey, we're a little bit carefree and cavalier about, how we do things in our environment. So, and I think, humans are pretty funny. Humans are sort of like a beehive. You shake the nest, right? You poke at it and everybody swarms and goes crazy. And all of a sudden you leave it alone for a couple of minutes and it sort of settles back in. So humanity is sort of settling back in, right? From the 2020 to 2022 shutdown.
Yep.
The interesting thing that we're now seeing is that, but people want to understand really what's going on. Now and then, that as that kicked off this whole hybrid work model because technology ramped up to meet that isolated, workforce. And they said, okay, but now everybody wants to sort of shuttle back in, or they woke up and realized, despite the fact that I put it up big on my LinkedIn, because I'm really big at posting a lot of stuff on LinkedIn, as you guys know.
Oh yeah.
Controversial or not, right?
Yep.
I don't really care,
Yep.
right? So I said, everybody's going to be back to the, guess it, by 2025 or 2026, everybody's back to the office. Why? One, because they want to be. Two, because they want that knowledge transfer. Three, because guess what? You can't have an office romance side affair if you're not in the office, right? So, and people miss that.
We won't cut that either.
Look, and even the new pope that just came in, he will tell you that, yeah, that goes on in the office. It happens, right?
Well, but technology is going to be the facilitator, whether it's from a health and wellness standpoint, or we have seen some of these instances of, a company, like on Monday morning saying 5 days a week back to the office, everybody comes in, and then it's musical chairs, right? Like no one has a place to work. They're not quite sure how they're supposed to interact.
Right.
And technology has the potential to like help make that transition a little more smooth.
100%. And Jason,
Yeah.
and that's why the occupancy utilization. So we did a study for NBC Universal where they wanted to know where people are when they come in. And it's not a matter of just looking at badge swipes when you come in. It's, they came in on this floor. Okay, big deal. So they came in on that floor, but they could have gone down the stairs to 3 floors below. Where did they go when they went on that floor? Now, we're not going to do GPS ID on your phone, but we're going to do people counting and we're going to look at desk counting. So when you have products like MHC Inspector we have this desk cradle hub now that can go into that. We say, hey, I've got people doing keystrokes and they're using a desk. But if that desk is idle and we have 100 desks on a floor and 50 of them are idle, well, those people have to be somewhere. And if we can't track them hiding in the bathroom, well, we can certainly track them if they're in a conference room or in their collaborative space. I guess eventually we'll track them in the bathroom, but not with cameras. We'll use something else for that.
Infrared.
Infrared.
Infrared. Right, exactly. Yeah. It's like that. Yeah. It's like the scope. Yeah.
Well, and that's that. I think that's probably the problem that a lot of people are thinking through is, can I make my building smart when I'm starting with an existing space versus new concrete and steel?
Yeah.
Like, is that possible to like retro technology into a space?
Sure. So Goldman Sachs owns the Conrad Hotel in New York. They came and said, we want to do a renovation, but we need to do it inside of 8 weeks. And we want it to be intelligent. We want to have all the cabling infrastructure in place so that we can meet the growing componentry that's going to come out over the next 5 or 7 years. We said, sure, we could do that. And we did. In 8 weeks, 2 summers ago, they did a gut of the ceiling, nothing else, gut of the ceiling, moved some walls around, brought all new LED low voltage efficiency light fixtures. Everything was overpowered, and we left a whole bunch of spaghetti up in the ceiling for them to grab endpoints for sensor technology going forward. It's as simple as that. When actually you guys did it, when Cisco took their brand new space, Paris, France, right off of the Champs-Élysées, in an old building, but was modernized infrastructure. It was delivered by the landlord or the owner of the building with an already installed warm ceiling, meaning it had lights, it had shades, it had a bunch of stuff with Schneider Electric in there. We said, no, it's not so intelligent. We're going to make it smarter. We took one floor and we showcased how we could use the existing fixtures that were there, just recable it with Power over Ethernet, bring all that smart technology, and then bring all the endpoints that Cisco has as part of Cisco Spaces on that second floor. Everybody was like, oh, you could do this anywhere? We could do it anywhere in the world.
Wow. So a lot of fixtures are capable of just like replacing the driver from a line voltage driver to a PoE driver
in a minute.
Yep.
Wow. And you're doing this, Scott. You mentioned Paris and you mentioned global. How are you doing this at scale? I mean, yes, you are in Connecticut and Palm Beach at the same time.
So
how do you do it globally?
So there's two ways to scale. There's 3 ways to scale actually. Scaling is all about making sure you have the right people, technology, and workforce, right? As part of that whole people person thing in a location. So you can go ahead and build it, meaning I can go hire people in market internationally, or I can go ahead and buy a company that's already there. Or the third way is create what the Japanese are so good at, which is the Kiritsu, and do that Kiritsu where we partner with a very strong firm. So, for example, we came and we brought in a team out of India called Sigma Byte. Sigma Byte's one of the largest low voltage installers, integrators in all of India. Solid people, trusted people. We really did a lot of interviewing and negotiating back and forth about what they had, what we had, understanding, really learning about each other. Got very comfortable with that. We said, you know what? Let's have an exclusivity arrangement. It allowed us to go ahead and scale because now we have 2,000 people that I don't have to hire in India, right? Because my partner Ketan hires them. He has them. And it allowed us to do a Cisco office in Mumbai, a Cisco office in Bangalore, and we continue to roll that same theme out. We're doing a similar program right now in Australia with another company. So that's the cleanest way to scale, right? We've actually spoken to several of the big players that are Cisco partners. And interestingly enough, they're sitting there going, no, we're living fat and happy with our IT world. We don't need to go into the OT side of things. We just, we're collecting our checks and doing what we do. I guarantee that inside of 18 months, they're all going to be jumping on this saying, how do we scale this to us? How do we get that knowledge? How do we do more of that?
Already starting to see it in Europe. Like I think that there are a lot of traditional IT resellers that are getting into that space primarily because of energy costs, and they're skyrocketing in Europe. Like they're trying to find any way they can to to tamp that down. Yeah.
Well, and obviously the whole data center, everybody building, terabytes and terawatts of data, right, for AI. That's just going to consume so much power.
Gotta find ways to I kind of call it like rob Peter to pay Paul, right? Like we're gonna take power from commercial spaces, MDUs, residential, so that we can shift some of that over to the demand for, on the data center side.
Yeah, and great. And then let me give you some insight on how to come off the grid. So there's now the capacity to have your own DC microgrid. So there's a construction company in the U.S. right now that's building their new headquarters, about 200,000 square feet. They're putting a 1.2 megawatt solar array on top of their building, right? But they're missing the boat because they're not taking that 1.2 megawatt of power that they have and pushing it through the back end of a DC injected Cisco switch, right, out to lights and shades and other things. They could have had that.
Yeah. To be able to bridge those two worlds between
now you're off the grid,
and the OT side.
Right.
Yeah.
Power grid goes down. You still have lights. You still have shades. You're doing storage batteries. You're doing all those things.
Agree.
Awesome. Cool. Well, Scott, 40 minutes has flown by. I knew it would, having a good chat with you. How do people engage you, as DBS if they have a project that they're interested in, trying to figure out how to straddle those two worlds between like the old world and like this new technology led world?
For us, it's fairly simple. It's word of mouth for the most part. We also have a pretty big outreach program. So I track a lot of leasing and occupancy activity city by city, what's happening. And then we get a good handle on, hey, what's the project team that's engaged in that. So we do a fair amount of that outreach, but also coming back in where there's a fair amount of interest. Look, everybody that's walked through a Cisco Penn 1 or a Cisco Atlanta or a Cisco London 6 and 7, or any of the Cisco partner that offices like a C-Spire in Birmingham, Alabama, that have just stood that whole program up. They're going, wow, how do I get that? Oh, well, guess what? We have a partner called Digital Building Solutions. Contact them. So we'll do the first thing. We'll educate them. We'll go ahead and walk them through what they can have, what's capable of being delivered to them, pricing it out for them, and they can make that informed decision of what they do. So we're doing Allstate right now. Their Allstate office in Dallas, Texas. Great opportunity. The narrative was there. IT wanted it. OT said, this is great. We really want to test this out. What sits behind that is another 3 or 4 million square feet of opportunity for them to continue to roll out. So for us, I mean, on our website, we're pretty boisterous on LinkedIn. We don't have a massive sales and marketing teams. That don't need to, right? Over time, this is going to continue to grow. And more importantly, I think my commitment to the industry and the ecosystem is to educate others on how to do this, so that becomes that recurring piece that goes forward.
No, that's one thing I appreciate about you, Scott. Like a lot of people would maybe try to keep that knowledge close and not share it with the world, but you're pretty selfless with trying to trying to be a real change agent in the industry. So folks, we'll put a link to dbs-poe.com in the show notes as well, so that you guys can get a hold of Scott and the team.
Yeah, it
Very
took me a
kind of you.
while to
Thank you.
understand why he did hunt as a pack.
Yep.
You don't, you're not the only lonely wolf out there. You need the pack.
Yeah,
Scott's
I
the
don't
pack
listen.
leader. Scott's the pack leader. Yeah.
Right. I don't
For
listen.
sure.
It's
Yeah.
it's it's wonderful being the alpha, right?
Mm-hmm.
But if you don't have a pack, being an alpha of one doesn't do much for you, right?
Yeah. Lone wolf doesn't get it done for sure. Yeah.
Okay. I think we conclude this, Scott, and we really appreciate you joining the podcast as usual. Like and subscribe, and follow Scott on LinkedIn. You won't be you'll be entertained for sure.
Thank you.
Yep.
Appreciate the
Awesome.
opportunity, guys.
Yep.
Hope to see you soon.